I'm live. Good morning. Well, actually, it's not morning anymore. It's just gone past midday. Today's the 24th of April, 2024, and I'm reading out of So Moses Was Born. This is a story about old Egypt. Pharaoh Seti died. His son Ramoses is the heir, and his older brother Nebunefer has gone to a place called the Living Waters, a sanctuary, because he abdicated going to go on the throne because he had a dream and had this dream 3 times, so he knew that Ramoses had to be the pharaoh. The oldest brother, Caridin, is a vizier. Anyway, we are now here at a conversation, and I have read part 1, and this is part 2. She looked at him in astonishment. "Don't you know why I came here? I thought men knew all these things my aunt tried to tell me." "You must enlighten the ignorance of a soldier who has no aunt," he said gravely. "But it is cold out here, so we will go into the pavilion and together enjoy the supper that was prepared for you." In the eyes of Pharaoh, the pavilion was furnished with stark simplicity. A leopard skin on the floor, a mattress, a travelling chest, a table, and 2 folding stools. But she looked at them with awe. Running her slender fingers along the fillets of ivory which patterned the ebony table, she said, "I'm glad your master is so rich, for we can eat his supper without feeling guilty. Can old men really eat so much food? Quails and prawns and stuffed wine leaves, fruit as well. It is enough to feed a village." She took a prawn in her fingers and carefully pinched off the shell. "After I've eaten another of these, I will tell you why I came here. For friends should be honest with each other." She sat on the mattress beside him and took off her sandals. They are rather too large, and I've made a blister on my heel. My aunt borrowed them for me, and this tunic. I usually prefer walking with bare feet." He took her foot in his hand and was pleased to see that water could have flown under the arch of the instep. You have very beautiful feet. I should like to give you sandals of gilded leather, or would you prefer scarlet studded with turquoise?" "Soldiers cannot afford to give presents like that, for I know that sometimes they cannot pay for their beer. Coloured sandals are worth perhaps 100 dutons, and much more than a donkey, and nearly as much as a cow. But I should be pleased if you would let me have one of those quails." She crunched the bones delicately as a cat, then wiped her fingers on the fringed napkin. "I should like another quail later, but first I must tell you why I came here, for there are many wicked people in Egypt, and one should be warned against them." She smiled at him, trying to look very grown up. "Some men are afraid to grow old because they have cruel gods who will punish them when they're dead for all the sins they have done since they were born. Their gods are more dishonest even than tax gatherers, for they accept bribes, yet keep a tally of every big and little sin, and still demand full payment. Old men want to feel young so that they can stop thinking about what is going to happen after they die. People will give gold or ivory for lion fat to make them strong, and if an old man buys a girl's virginity, he becomes young for a little while." Ramoses wondered if he had unwittingly suffered from the same unpleasing delusion. She saw he was momentarily abstracted, so took another quail, and then smiled at him reassuringly. "You must not think my aunt is a silly woman. She does not believe this really happens, but she believes very firmly in large and small cattle. A woman to rejoice my brother's heart. He too is very interested in the value of things." "But not in the value of people? He must be nice to have a brother even if he is dull." She stroked the cat, which was rubbing its head against her. "This is a very friendly cat, so I know she belongs to you and not to the old man, for cats are wise about people. I'm very fortunate that you are so different to his other servant, the one who wore the gold amulets, for I can see that you are sorry for me, and he would have offered only 2 large cattle unless my aunt had been shrewd at bargaining. He seemed to think I should be honored." She added indignantly, "Do I look so young and silly that I could never hope for a husband who would love me more than 3 large cattle?" To his astonishment, Rameses heard himself say, in sincerity, "You look young enough to believe in dreams, and make them come true, and wise enough to restore men's faith and beauty. I know you said that only to make me feel braver, but I am very grateful. The soldiers I have seen do not talk like you. They drink much beer and then grumble that it is not worth even a uten." She sighed. "I can see the moon through the curtains, and it is much lower in the sky than when I came here. I'm afraid I was boasting when I said I hoped the old man would sleep until more than an hour after dawn. My aunt says it is dangerous to offend nobles, especially when they're old and unloved and greedy. I do not wish to make things more difficult for my aunt. To be really honest, I do not wish to make things more difficult for myself when she's cross. I'm hungry, and I do not find it comfortable to sleep on the floor when I have many bruises. It is odd how one's body asks for things that one would be too proud to ask for oneself. My aunt says it would be cowardly if I were to disobey the old man and leave her to bear the wrath of whoever he is." "Do you not know the name of whoever he is?" "No, and please do not tell me, for it will be easier not to hate him if I do not know his name. I shall shut my eyes while it's happening, so that I do not know his face either. It's not pleasant to hate any more, and if I do not know his face or his name, I shall not hate him enough to have to hate myself too. Why is it so difficult to believe something your mind says it's true? I expect you try to believe that you are doing a good thing in serving whoever he is. But the real part of you is unhappy, because it wants to work for someone it can honor. I think you are like me. The real part of us is the only light we believe in. We try to carry it like a torch, but our hand is not strong enough, and when the torch flickers in a high wind, we are afraid. But a lamp, even a small lamp of tallow, when you cannot afford oil, is better than the dark. But I'm talking too much." She glanced towards the curtain. "Will I have to wait until dawn before I'm hurt by the old man?" "The old man will not hurt you," said Rameses gently. Before he could stop her, she bit her forearm until the blood ran between her small white teeth. "I'm not a coward. You will not hear me cry out when he makes me bleed." Remembering how he too used to bite his arm to punish it for letting him be afraid, he could have wept for her. She saw he was distressed and kissed him on the cheek. "Please do not be sad because of me," she said. "Your eyes tell me that you also dream dreams which are too splendid for little people like us. You're a soldier, guarding an old man who cannot command your real loyalty. But I expect you used to think of yourself as a captain, protecting thousands from oppression." "That is true enough, but what are your dreams of the future?" "They may seem silly to you because they are so ordinary. I want to have a child by someone who loves me as though I were as beautiful as the women I see smiling from their carrying litters in the city streets. I want to be able to give that child everything I have ever wanted, because I loved him so much that the meadows beyond the evening cloud will be as familiar to him as the pot of moon daisies on my windowsill." Rameses put out his arm and drew her back to lean against his shoulder. "You and I are caught between our splendid dreams and the pitiful world we live in. Yet this hour belongs to us. The weary old man is asleep. His dreams will be fuzzy with wine, so in the morning he will believe anything I tell him. You will not leave my arms, but I will swear that he received youth from you." She clapped her hands like a happy child, then hesitated and slowly shook her head. "You're very kind and very clever, but your beautiful plan cannot come true. Whoever he is," and She will insist on making sure that I have done what is expected of me. Very gently he kissed her on the mouth and said humbly, "Would you share your virginity with me, a soldier, who cannot even buy you a pair of sandals?" Joyfully she smiled up at him. "My aunt will be pleased, and I shall be pleased too. The gods are very kind to us. You are quite sure whoever he is will not wake and find us cheating him?" He went to the curtain which closed off the inner room and pretended to peer between them. The old man is so fast asleep that even a colossus of Ramoses toppling on a limestone pavement could not wake him. She was sitting with her feet curled under her, trying to pretend that she was flushed because the pavilion was warm and not through his kiss. "There's a statue of Ramoses near our village. I hope it does not fall over yet, for sometimes I sleep in its shadow. When I have been to the market at Tanis with the knives that my cousin makes. You will please not tell anyone that I go to the city market, but it is sometimes necessary. I quite often feel sorry for Pharaoh. It cannot be pleasant to tread on the necks of prisoners who even in pictures are dangerous unless they are bound. But we must not think of Ramoses or whoever he is, or any other sad thing." She stood up, curling her toes in the deep pelt of the leopard skin. "I did not listen carefully to my aunt, but I know she told me to take off my tunic in case it got torn. I will pretend I'm going to swim in the canal, and then I shall not be shy of being naked." She pulled her tunic over her head, and he decided that all his statues of her should be carved in ivory. The wreath of moon daisies slid from the dark cloud of her hair, which fell below her shoulders. Why did women wear wigs when hair should be soft and alive and free? "Shall I lie on the mattress?" She stood on tiptoe to kiss him on the mouth. "I know you are shy too, for you do not resemble the statue of Min, which I once saw carried through the streets of Tanis." He was shy, but with the innocence of those who receive the joy which Ptah conceived for his children when Earth was young. Her skin was smooth as silver, and her bones felt light as the wings of a singing bird. "Your arms are stronger than the branches of a tree," she said. "Even if there was a great storm, I know you would not let me fall." He set her gently on the mattress, glad that the flower blue of the coverlet was so exact a foil for the shadow in the curves of her body. He laughed, in the laughter of a boy who discovers he is no longer afraid of being young. "Perhaps I take off my kilt, and we lie naked in each other's arms. I shall be strong enough to protect you from the anger of your aunt." She thought he could do no more than protect her from the cupidity of an old woman, the lust of an aged man. But the gods had given him a new Eyrie, an Eyrie he could cherish above Egypt, for into her hands he would put the power of Pharaoh. "It is very odd," she said in a small voice, "that although I am trembling, I am not at all afraid. It's an odd feeling, as though I were quivering and yet still, like the wings of a hawk when it rests in the air." Then Ramoses forgot all he had learned of the art of love-making, which he had so often exercised with the skill of a gymnast, or the deliberate patience of one trained in ordeals. His body and hers obeyed a rhythm which the trees know when they bud in the young year, which a bird obeys when it sings with the morning. Towards dawn they slept, she with her head on his shoulder, and Horus came to Ramoses in a dream. In the dream, Horus told many things to Pharaoh that were both terrible and splendid. But when Ramoses woke, he knew only that he had seen a great hawk with feathers of gold circle 3 times above the pavilion in which he slept with a girl whom he loved in his arms, and the hawk carried in its beak an open lotus. And Ramoses rejoiced with a joy that only the young in heart dare remember. For 3 days Pharaoh remained in the marshes, for he was reluctant to return to the palace, where he would have to pretend to be the same man who had left there so recently, and yet who had been so utterly changed. He had told his love that when he was no longer bound in service to the old man, he would meet her in the shadow of the Colossus of Ramoses, where she would wait for him at noon and at sunset. When he returned to the palace, he summoned the maker of the royal sandals and ordered him to create a pair of scarlet leather with ribbons of turquoise tipped with gold lotus buds. But these were made before evening. Pharaoh knew they would fit, for her feet were the length of his hand and the breadth of 4 fingers. Before sending for Caradan, he wrapped the sandals in fine linen and packed them in an ivory box. He showed the box to Caradan and said, "It contains my first gift to the mother of my son in Horus." Caradan looked at him with a patience they both found so exceedingly irksome and said, "I am gratified to hear that the gods have indicated their choice so expeditiously." Ramoses laughed. They have been more than gracious. They allowed me to choose, and then informed me of their approval. Do not look so dubious, Caradan, for when the gods and Pharaoh agree, men must join in their thanksgiving. I join most heartily. Now there will be no need for the elaborate preparations I made on behalf of Pharaoh. He tried to sound enthusiastic. 27 girls can return to their homes with such emoluments as I have already arranged. And one remains here, to rejoice the heart of your brother. I shall make her a secondary wife without delay. When my son is born, she will become my queen. Caradan, do you realize what it means to me? To find all that I hoped for in Eri and Nefertari has become true in one woman. It all sounds most encouraging, if a little premature, said Caradan cautiously. It would have been easier if the gods had sent you a more timely dream. I presume you've had a dream? Ramoses nodded, and he went on. However, one must not expect the gods to be expedient as Pharaoh's vizier. Tell me, which of the chosen is chosen in fact? She had better occupy the house which used to belong to my chief scribe. It is comfortable and secluded, and will be convenient for your discreet visits. I am flattered by your concern for my welfare, dear brother. In the meantime, you will continue to guard my real identity with the same admirable discretion you have already shown. I have somewhat improved on the role you selected for me. I am no longer an aged non-entity with pathetic faith in the theft of virginity as a specific against impotence, but a mercenary soldier who was freely given the joys which his master missed through a surfeit of wine. Caradan stared at his brother in horror. Surely you are not telling me that the last girl, the one who came to you on the 28th night of the moon, is the one you mean? Ramoses smiled and said in a voice laced with patronage, Your choice of one whose ancestry will not please you more pedantic scribes was pleasing to Horus, and more than pleasing to Pharaoh. Caradan, I beg of you to conceal your dismay, for to invent a suitable genealogy would be well within your powers. Ramoses, this is incredible news. He clutched the arms of his chair as though he clung to an overturned reed in a river of crocodiles. Suddenly Pharaoh was afraid. Caradan, what are you trying to tell me? Caradan, speak. This is impossible. The gods cannot be so heedless of my intentions, so cruel as to make a mockery of all I have done. Is she dead, Caradan? Caradan stared at him, then bent his head. Pharaoh, she's dead. Words fell from the mouth of Ramoses, harsh as chips of stone from a tomb worker's hammer. So even Horus cannot protect Egypt from the ineptitude of her vizier? Forgive me, Ramoses, he whispered abjectly. The guilt is mine, all mine. How did she die? Speak, Caradan. He hesitated so long that it was almost a relief from the anguish of apprehension when he said, She was killed by a chariot. The street was narrow. No one saw who drove the horses. She suffered no pain. She was killed instantly. She's dead, Ramosis. You must not think of her anymore. She is dead. This is the end of the chapter entitled Pavilion in the Reeds. And the next chapter is entitled The Old Palace. Have a very good